Do you like to ski? Imagine you like to ski. Imagine you just saw a deal for a weekend trip at a decent ski lodge and you bought it. Non-refundable. Then a day or two later, you saw another deal for a weekend trip. Nicer lodge, great place, much more fun. On sale for only $100. You go ahead and buy the package deal. Again, non-refundable. Then you finally get around to sitting down with your calendar and the terms of the deals, and you realize that there is a conflict. They can both only be used for one weekend. The same weekend. All the other possible travel dates booked up. You have to just pick one and forget about the other. So which would you go with? Which do you want? The one at the nicer lodge, obviously, right? I mean, it's the better trip, nicer place, you'll enjoy it more. But lots of people don't do that. They pick the more expensive option, even though it wasn't as good of a trip. Why on earth would someone do that? Because it's harder to tell yourself that you wasted $200 than just $100. Even though you're out $300 either way. Lots of people let that bad feeling of having wasted something get in the way of making a better choice for their future. Psychologists and economists have a term for this, the sunk cost fallacy. And one of the things they mean by this is that when you're deciding what to do next, you should only be considering how those choices will affect your future, not whether they're consistent with choices you've made in the past, which is exactly what happens when someone decides to forego a nicer ski trip, just because they've already paid more for something else. Even though they can't get that money back. It's a sunk cost. Their choice only affects their future, whether they have a ski trip at an okay place or a great place. Here's another example. Imagine you're going to see a movie that costs $10, and on your way up to the ticket counter, you realize that you've lost a $10 bill out of your wallet, but you still have enough money to buy the ticket. Would you? In lab studies, most everyone who's in this situation follows through with seeing the movie despite the loss. But if you change the scenario slightly and say that instead of losing a $10 bill, you already bought the ticket and then lost that, a sizable number decide to just go home. In either case, you're choosing between a $10 loss and no movie or a $20 loss and seeing a movie. But the feeling of having already paid for the ticket, the sunk cost, seems to make it harder for people to justify the purchase. This doesn't just apply to financial costs either. It also applies to your time and hard work. This is why it can be really difficult to part with your IKEA furniture. You worked really hard to put it together, but any buyer on Craigslist is just gonna see an amateurish plywood bookshelf. In studies, people who built an IKEA storage box were willing to pay much more for it than others who were offered the same box built by someone else. Swap the IKEA box for an origami crane and add another option of a crane crafted by an expert origamist? And the people with the sunk cost of time and labor valued their creations as much as strangers valued the professionally crafted products. And when asked if they thought others would agree with them, their estimates of the value barely budged. They thought strangers would agree that their crane was just as valuable. When the sunk cost of your time and hard work inflates your perception of something's value, we even name it after the store, the IKEA effect. But there are some scenarios that can kind of look like they might involve a sunk cost, even when they don't. Imagine you finish 7 semesters of college with 1 to go, and you get an offer for your dream job. In fact, they say you don't even need your degree. We'll take you right now. But no rush. If you want to finish, the job will be waiting for you. Having just learned all about sunk costs, you might be pretty eager to throw off the shackles of that final semester of college and jump straight to your dream job. First 7 semesters be damned. But your sunk 7 semesters of school can still affect your future options. In both options, your job is waiting for you. But in one, you can get a college degree in just a semester. Maybe it's worth it to you or maybe not, but it's still worth considering the small probability that maybe you want to change careers later, or just have something to fall back on. And furthermore, the rewards of education aren't quite proportionally allocated. Getting 7/8 of the way through a college degree doesn't give your income 7/8 of the advantage associated with a college education. The benefit comes from the completion, so it might still be useful to see that last semester through, just in case it comes in handy. The good news is that learning a little bit about this fallacy might make you less susceptible to it. Students in programs that taught about the sunk cost fallacy were more willing to abandon failing projects than those that weren't. But it's always harder to see your own biases than to see biases in others. So keep an open mind if someone points out that maybe your past decisions are clouding your current ones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.